All right, let's talk about something you've probably never thought much about, but it affects you directly. When you get a prescription or a treatment, who's actually deciding if it gets paid for? Today, we're diving deep into Turkey's healthcare system to find out exactly that. I mean, think about it. You go to the doctor, you get a treatment, but who pays? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer? Well, it's incredibly complex. There's this huge, invisible system working behind the scenes, and we're about to crack it wide open. And to really get a sense of just how massive this system is, take a look at this number, 1.3 trillion Turkish lira. That's not the total value, that's the projected health spending for just 1 year, 2025. With a budget that huge, you can imagine that every single tiny decision sends massive ripples across the entire country. So, the trillion lira question is, where does all that cash go? And more importantly, who's in charge of the checkbook? This brings us to the main character in our story today. Meet the Social Security Institution, or as it's known, the SGK. Now, the easiest way to wrap your head around what they do is to think of them as the insurance company for the entire country. Yeah, seriously. They're the single organization that bankrolls everything from your neighborhood pharmacy visit to the most complex hospital procedures. But, the SGK's job is anything but easy. It's this constant high-stakes balancing act. They're basically walking a tightrope. On one side, you have the promise of giving every single citizen access to the best, most modern healthcare. But on the other side, the immense pressure of keeping that trillion lira budget from spiraling out of control. The success of the whole system, really, depends on them hitting that perfect balance. So how do they do it? How does the SGK actually manage this crazy balancing act? How do they decide which new, shiny, life-saving treatment gets a yes and which one gets a no? Well, the answer lies in a single, unbelievably powerful rulebook. And this is it. It's called the Health Implementation Communique, or SIUT for short. And believe me, calling it the Constitution of the reimbursement world, that's not an exaggeration. It's the law of the land. It's the absolute final word on what gets paid for. And the rule is just dead simple. If a treatment, a drug, a medical device, anything, isn't written down in the SUT, the SGK does not pay for it. End of story. Period. So you can see why, for any company making medical tech, getting into this book is the holy grail. It's everything. Okay, so this naturally leads us to the biggest question of all, right? If this one book has all the power, who writes it? Who are the people in the room making these literally life and death decisions? That power, it belongs to the Healthcare Services Pricing Commission, or SFK. You can think of them as the brain of the whole operation. And it's not just one group, it's a mix of heavy hitters. You've got the Ministry of Health, they're focused on what's best for patients. Then there's the Ministry of Treasury and Finance, and you can bet they're guarding the budget like a hawk. And finally, you have the Council of Higher Education, bringing in the hard science and academic evidence. This mix ensures that every single decision is a carefully weighed compromise between what patients need, what the country can afford, and what the science actually supports. Okay, so now we know who decides. Let's get into the how. For a new medical device or a new drug to get that stamp of approval, it's not just a simple application process. No, it's more like a grueling obstacle race. So an application can go down one of two main paths. You've got Group A, which is the really tough one. This is for the true game changers, the brand new breakthrough technologies. Then there's Group C, which is a more, let's say, familiar route. This is for products that are pretty similar to stuff that's already out there. And this split, this two-track system, really tells you everything about their goals. They want to encourage real innovation, but they also have to be super careful about managing costs. And this process, oh man, it's a marathon. First, the company submits this massive dossier of evidence. From there, it goes to a scientific commission for a deep dive. Does this thing actually do what they say it does? Then, the Ministry of Health has to give its official opinion. After that, another group calculates exactly how much this is going to cost the national budget. And only after it's passed all of those hurdles, all those stages, does it finally land on the SFK's desk for the final, ultimate decision. Yes or no. But here's the thing. All this paperwork, all this bureaucracy, it's not just about pinching pennies. It actually shows us a system that's built to learn, to adapt, and to evolve with one main goal above all else: protecting patients. And the newest part of that learning process is the Health Policy's Scientific Advisory Commission, which was just set up this year. Just think of this group. It's made up of 14 independent academics as a scientific compass. Their job is to constantly point the SJK in the right direction, using the latest, most up-to-date scientific evidence to make sure every treatment is not just effective, but safe. And let me give you a real-world example of how this plays out. The Commission's work was recently described as an alarm bell going off. They found something really disturbing about certain titanium hip prostheses. They were failing way, way earlier than they ever should, forcing people to go through painful second surgeries. This was a huge patient safety risk. And the system's reaction? It was fast. Once that scientific evidence came in and the alarm was sounded, a recommendation shot right up the chain. And by January 2026, the SFK is set to act decisively, cutting off reimbursement for that specific risky use case. I mean, it's a perfect textbook example of science directly leading to a policy change that protects real people. So, okay, we've talked about commissions, rules, a whole lot of acronyms. Let's zoom back out for a second and connect all these dots back to the thing that matters most, your health. Because what might seem like some distant, faceless bureaucracy in Ankara is anything but. From a cancer drug to a surgical implant, every single signature on a piece of paper in those meetings, it directly, and I mean directly, determines the quality and the safety of the healthcare you and your family receive. This system isn't abstract, it's deeply personal. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that central challenge, that incredible tightrope walk. On one side, you have the amazing promise of life-saving innovations, and technology is moving faster than ever. But on the other, you have the cold, hard discipline of financial reality, of making sure this system can actually survive for the long haul. So that leaves us with one final huge question. As medical technology keeps accelerating, how will this crucial balance be struck in the future? Not just in Turkey, but really everywhere. That right there, that is the $1 trillion or trillion lira question for the future of all of our health.